What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and I'm still doing Tribeca. Yeah, it's time for the Tribeca Film Festival, which is happening. And the films that I've seen this year at Tribeca, this being one of them, uh, this is I Was Born This Way. So it's a documentary. It does not have audio description, nor does it have distribution. So it's something that could change. That's kind of one of the things when you do like these documentaries at film festivals is while the teams could, because sometimes documentaries do have audio description at festivals, it's also likely that they may end up getting it through distribution, depending on how that works out for them. So I'm picking up something now that could have something later, and just trying to help give it some traction and some energy and some fire behind it and getting it across the line. Plus, it's Pride Month. I'm a member of Galika. I'm a queer film critic also. So yeah, I'm I'm doing the Lord's work here for Reverend Carl Bean, who I did not know who he was, nor do I feel like I've heard the song. And I feel so uneducated sometimes when I watch documentaries about things where I'm like, feels like the world knows what we're talking about, and then I don't. But luckily, I think it was Questlove who said that he had to be introduced to and did not know either, and now he's like a producer on the film. So I didn't feel too bad. I was like, well, Questlove knows everything about music. So if Questlove did, as a gay musician himself, also did not know, then I don't I don't feel as bad that I also was out of the loop here. But we explore the life of Lake Carl Bean, who uh, lived through quite a life, just quite a life, and he tells it. This documentary has been gestating for years. This documentary originally was being kicked around just sort of like as a thought piece almost, and then it sort of evolved into a documentary short, and they were seeking additional funding. And when they did that, Questlove was sort of like, this feels like it needs to be a feature. So then they decided to push it for feature length, and they got more producers on board to help fund it and move it forward. Um, and among those producers, we have Jamie Lee Curtis is a producer on this film as well. Billy Porter. We got Lady Gaga is in the film. I don't think she's an actual producer though. And there are a bunch of other producers on this. There are a whole bunch of producers on this film. So uh, everyone showed up in support of I Was Born This Way. And this is one of the documentaries that feels like it's right for the time. I think it was Billy who said, how do we continue, when sort of like when the world is on fire around us with everything that's happening, how can we continue to make art and like sort of like for like the next generation of of queer youth that are coming up, because for them finding out about somebody like Carl Bean and their life may save their life, because the world is very anti-LGBTQ right now, especially the T in that, probably more so than the other letters, sadly, unfortunately. And also, if you dare to use a pronoun, uh, or introduce yourself with pronouns, you have also drawn ire from a block of people who definitely don't watch me, but I or have turned off by now. They ran away when they're gone. If you've made it this deep, why? Let me know in the comments. Uh, so, um, yeah, it's Carl from childhood. We learn about how his birth mother was like 15 when she gave birth. So he ended up with adoptive parents. And so when he was brought home, he had like a sister that was like 3 years older than him. And he had a nice, happy childhood until he didn't. I mean, he remembers like a huge chunk of his childhood being sort of great, and his dad was really nice and sort of gave him everything that he needed. And but he always leaned into feminine qualities. You know, he played with the dollhouse that was for his sister. You know, he didn't naturally choose the boy toys. Uh, I mean, he will eventually choose boy. Anyway, he chose. This isn't a kid that plays with GI Joes. Well, maybe, I don't know. I mean, you could take their clothes off back in the. Anyway, he played with dolls, but GI Joes are. Anyway, I don't know. He liked things his own way, this way. And but the other thing that he really loved was music, and it focuses a lot on him just always singing all the time and being just sort of a bright personality, and how music sort of championed him. He is a survivor of just a really sort of unfortunate sexual assault situation in his youth, sort of like repeated molestation that he goes into and talks about. And he came up at a time when it was really, really not okay to be gay, and had a fling with another boy that boy told their parents and made it sound like that Carl had turned him or had done something evil. And so it was all suddenly Carl's fault, like a one person experience. And that's when he chose to leave and go explore and try to figure out the rest of the world. And I'm skipping over some things here. I'm not including it. I should probably include that he didn't just leave. Because there's like trigger warning stuff. So yeah, he does try to commit suicide, which leads him to this hospital where he meets his birth mom, who works there at this psychiatric ward. After he gets out of the hospital, sent to the psychiatric ward, and his mom is the janitor, his birth mom, and recognizes him, and they sort of reconnect. And then when he gets out of there, he lives with her, and then he goes and explores essentially gay culture, and learns about, you know, the trans community and how they turn tricks, and also gay boys, and you know, how there are these rich white businessmen that are getting their fix or whatever, you know, and then probably going and passing legislation to try to take those rights away. So hypocrites. All through this, there's still music, and one of the things about music is church. At some point, he gets pulled along to church, and he hears these great choirs, you know, this music, everything. And that becomes sort of like a huge part of who he is singing in these choirs in these churches. And he starts hearing, luckily he's granted access to a slightly more progressive church to begin with, not a fire and brimstone church, but a church that he says kind of allowed them to think a little bit more for themselves, and pushed them to question and make choices. It was a church, like a black church, that reminded black people that they were beautiful as they were. And even though at the time that didn't also mean gay, it at least spurned some self-love message in him that kind of goes to fuel him through his journey. He goes on to record the album. He records an album, and then also later the single Born This Way. And he ends up founding a church that ends up sort of spreading because more people want to found churches like it. And it's a church that largely serves a black and queer population, and becomes a home for many people who want to maintain some sort of faith, but every other church has sort of told them that it's impossible for them to be who they are and also maintain a level of faith. So he becomes, as the church grows and gets more and more, you know, little locations in different cities, they realize that he's sort of like a head of the church and like a denomination. So he becomes the archbishop of this church that he created, that just wants to spread this message of love, that everybody deserves love. You know, that Lin-Manuel moment, love is love is love is love is love is love. It's been so quoted. It's very simple. And that's kind of the fast track version through it. I don't want to tell you, I want you to watch the thing, but I also want you to be interested enough in Carl's life to go see it, because I liked it. I liked it a lot. The only thing that I thought, if I was like putting my film critic hat on, gotta get my film critic hat on. Now we gotta talk about the negatives. I just didn't need the reenactments. It also made it a little bit harder. Like, I love to be able to come along sometimes for certain documentaries or films that are independent and sort of need that push to come along and say, yeah, it's a great movie. It doesn't have an audio description, but maybe if we talk about it, it'll end up with a distributor and it'll get audio description. So let's go ahead and grade it. And I'm probably still going to do that here, but there's a level of reenactment that happens, and to the point where I could actually hear a little bit of dialogue in some places. And it made me wonder, like, how much I was missing of that reenactment thing as a blind person. And it's the thing that I didn't really need. And I can kind of understand why it's there, because it's not like this is a guy who, you know, in the queer community, we end up with a lot of found families because we end up running away from the things. A lot of LGBTQ people end up having to leave, so they don't necessarily have photos and home videos from when they grew up. Although he's still in contact with his sister speaks in the documentary, at least as of the time. Again, this was filmed a while ago. They started making this before the pandemic. I don't know if his sister is still around, but she does manage to speak for the documentary. So, in that, she may have had some access to some old photos and videos and stuff that could have been included that she just inherited, you know, I don't know. But the reenactment stuff feels very sort of like History Channel to me, kind of when they do those documentaries and then they hire those, they're really not great actors on History Channel. I'm sorry. Like 8 out of 10 of them are not great. Every once in a while you get somebody and like, that was a solid performance. And then you get a couple of people there who feel like that they're reading lines for the very first time that they just were handed before they walked on screen. They're like, I need you to say this. All right. Mr. President, you've got a call on the phone from like, oh, okay. So reenactment stuff can get kind of spotty, especially when it's not the focus, because it's not the focus. The focus is Carl. The focus is listening to Carl. I came here to listen to Carl, and I came here to hear people speak about Carl and how Carl changed their life. I don't necessarily need the reflective look at his past, but then again, I'm blind. So if you take that aspect out of it, this is a podcast, you know? This basically could be a podcast. This is just an interview with Carl Bean, you know? So I understand there have to be visual elements to it, but I maybe would have kept the reenactments to non-auditory. So that way it just becomes visual elements of what he's talking on top of. And then, because we're either, as a blind person in these sort of situations, I'm either thinking, okay, so I'm staring at him or something. And that something could be a wide range of things. It could be important. It could not be important. It could be archival footage. It could be anything. The visuals could be anything. And the problem with documentary audio description, and why sometimes I'm a little bit kinder to documentaries in general, is because a lot of these films are just talking like the whole way through. Like if you think about this movie review and how few times I've stopped it's really hard to put audio description to this. If somebody had to describe this, if I sent this to somebody and was like, could you describe this? Please put audio description, but don't trample my don't trample my dialogue. Be like, good luck. You know, I don't know where do we start? This man doesn't shut up. So there is that aspect too, but also an awareness of how, as somebody, I was cited and now I'm not. I know that there are often things in imagery. There's sometimes filmmakers love to use sort of that a little bit of a contradictory of let's talk about one thing, but I'll show you the other thing. So while he's talking about love, you know, we could be seeing a lot of oppression in the background and being reminded of all the hate that was out there in the world. So, I mean, there could be a lot of really powerful imagery that's happening in this film, and I don't know what it is. But when we started including sort of acting into this, it started blending a little bit into it's sort of like a different genre for me. And I suddenly cared a little bit more that I couldn't see. Other times I just try to pretend like, we're just staring at the person speaking. That's all we're doing. And I can convince myself of that and get through it. But when I hear other things happening in the background, then I wonder what they are and what it is that I'm missing. And then I wonder contextually, I'm like, okay, well, that's the style we're doing, is speaking over visual images. So what else am I missing? Anyway, because I don't know if you know this or not, but there are blind people that are LGBTQ also. So they may want to watch this. So we're talking about the whole thing here. The whole experience of I Was Born This Way. So, and of course Gaga comes in and talks about the song and how much it meant to her, and I loved Gaga being here, and of course her presence will bring the little monsters to this. All you have to do is tell the little monsters that Gaga makes an appearance, and I'm sure that like half of them show up. So this film will have some sort of a life simply because Gaga has graced it with her presence. It's sad to say that Questlove and Billy Porter don't have that kind of I don't know, like backing behind them. I mean, they have fans. I'm not gonna say they don't have fans, but Gaga has the kind of fans who just apparate, you know. Like, I don't know if you heard about the concert in South America, but she has fans. Let's just say that. So, yeah. I don't know. I feel like I've said everything that I need to say about this. I've made my peace. I really enjoyed this movie. And yeah, I just wouldn't, the reenactment stuff and the fact that I was aware that it was there is the one thing, but I'll reflect that, I guess, a little bit in the grade. I think if I Was Born This Way, an A-. I thought it was really strong. I liked it. And I hope it gets distribution out of Tribeca. I wonder through who? This feels like the kind of thing like Strand is going to pick up. And I had to predict. I'm going to predict Strand. That's my guess for distribution. We'll see if I'm correct. We'll see if I'm right. Anyway, that's it. Thank you for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I will see you guys on the other side.